Every stock has its highs and lows, but some investors find a way to win no matter what. With thousands of hours of research and first-hand trading experience, I'll break down short selling in a super simple way that's never been done before. I'll show you what can happen when your short selling goes completely wrong, and at the end of this video, I'll give you the exact formula for when short selling is a great idea. But first off, let's tackle the big question. What exactly is short selling and how does it work? Now, you've probably heard of the golden rule of making money in the stock market: buy low, sell high. Only you know that's the traditional approach where you buy stocks hoping they'll climb in value. But let's flip that concept on its head, and the easiest way to explain short selling is to use a simple analogy. Let's say your mate bought a brand new shiny iPhone 15 Pro from Apple. So the day it arrives at his house, you ask to borrow the new phone before he even takes it out of the box. Your buddy agrees, so now you take his new iPhone and you sell it for $1,000, which could be a problem because if he finds out it's gone, he's probably gonna punch you in the mouth. Rightfully so, I might add. But a broken nose or missing teeth aside, what you've essentially done is sold an iPhone short, and now you need to return your mate a new iPhone 15 Pro, so you're in the market to buy one. Your local big box retailer has them for sale for $1,100, and you could buy one there and return it to your mate and be completely done with it. But then you'd lose $100 in the process, so you don't want to do that. So instead, you find a listing on eBay for a new iPhone 15 Pro for $900 as the seller got two for his birthday. You buy it, return it to your buddy, and keep the $100 difference between the $1,000 you sold his iPhone for and the $900 the new one cost in your pocket.
How the money comes in, the parade comes to town.
Lo and behold, you've worked that out, so you made a profit by shorting, i.e. selling something of which you didn't have possession and replacing it at a later date for less than what you sold it for. And the exact same concept applies to shorting the stock market. You borrow shares from XYZ company, just like the iPhone, and then you can sell it. Then you have to replace those shares, and if you can do it for less than what you sold them for, you make a profit. If not, you take a loss. And the only difference is that you borrow the shares through the brokerage, obviously not your mate, and both the buying and the selling of the shares take place in the stock market cage. So short selling is basically the mirror image of buying low, selling high. It's about making money while the stocks are on the way down. But before you go all in on this, we need to answer one important question. What are the risks involved in short selling? Well, when you buy a stock or when you go long, you will use the classic method of investing where you will profit if the stock price goes up. You'll do this if you think the company will do well, thereby providing you with the profit you seek. But with shorting stocks, it is inherently riskier than going long for three main reasons. Starting with reason one, so normally if you buy a stock and things go south, the most you can lose is what you put in, 100% of your investment. But for those who short, the potential loss can blow past 100%. That's because there's no real cap on how high a stock's price can go. So if you've borrowed and sold stocks betting they'll fall, but instead they shoot up, you could end up owing a lot more than you first thought. Imagine having to scramble to buy back those stocks at sky high prices just to return them. And later on in this video, I'm actually going to show you an example of when a company lost billions because of this. Now, for the second major disadvantage, shorting stock means you borrow stocks to sell them now, hoping to buy them back cheaper later. But borrowing isn't free. You've got to pay your broker a fee. Sometimes it's as small as 0.3% a year. But honestly, watch out because in rare cases, it can skyrocket all the way up to 20 to 30%. Plus, while you're sitting on those borrowed stocks, any dividends those stocks pay, you're paying those to the person you borrowed them from until you buy the stocks back. And if you delay buying the stocks back because you're waiting for the price to drop, well, those fees and dividends start to pile up. So the second big risk is the hefty fees and dividends that you're on the hook for. Which takes us on to major disadvantage number 3. So when it's time to buy back and return those stocks, there's no promise you'll even find a sale for them, and maybe no one's selling, or maybe there's just not enough stock to go around. Or if the reason you bet against the stock doesn't pan out, everyone's probably rushing to buy back the stock, causing a massive headache. This actually gets extra tricky in something called a short squeeze. So that's when a stock's price jumps and everyone tries to buy back at once, causing even more price spikes. Those are the big risks with shorting stocks, potentially unlimited losses, fees and dividends that add up, and the chance you might not be able to buy the stocks back when you need to. But can average investors participate in short selling, or is it only for the pros? Well, before I dive right into that, if you're looking for a way to make consistent income from the comfort of your own home, then check out the link in the description to learn everything you need to get your online business up and running from scratch as a complete beginner. But going back to whether beginners can get into short selling, there's actually a funny story that shows what happens when short selling goes extremely wrong. A few of the biggest investment firms in the nation were betting that GameStop was gonna die. It had been shorted over 100% of the shares of the company. What that means is that over 100% of the company's available shares had been short, and the company had essentially been loaned out several times over to make the bet that GameStop was basically gonna go bankrupt. But the degenerate gamblers in a Reddit meme community had a different idea. These guys speculate like apes, and they noticed the percentage of shorts on GameStop. They teamed up and bought everything they could, which meant that the price went higher and higher. That meant that the hedge firms like Melvin Capital had to double down on their short, thus raising the gravity of the situation. This led to a short squeeze, a scenario where the hedge funds found themselves unable to buy back the stock at affordable prices to cover their shorts. In their desperate attempts to hedge, buying more GameStop shares only fueled the price further. It went from $19 to $483 per share in one day, which is insane. And Melvin Capital lost billions and billions of dollars. This was one of those rare occasions where a bunch of amateur investors calling themselves Wall Street Bets completely destroyed Wall Street. But how do short sellers decide which stocks to bet against? I've broken it down into a simple 7-step checklist for you to follow. And to walk you through our checklist, let's go back to the financial crisis of 2008 and use Michael Burry's strategic short against the housing market as a case study. Starting with step 1, Burry saw the housing market was way too expensive. Banks were giving loans left, right to people who couldn't pay them back, and this made a big bubble in the housing market, meaning houses were priced way higher than they should have been. Step 1 is to check if the prices are overvalued, which takes us on to step 2, and everyone was super excited about the housing market, thinking prices was going higher and higher. But Burry thought this was way too good to be true and a sign that things might crash. So step 2 is to analyze sentiment and do the opposite. Moving on to step 3, Burry noticed that soon lots of homeowners would have to pay more on their mortgage, likely leading many to not be able to pay at all. This would make the bubble pop and prices to drop. Step 3 is looking for upcoming events that could trigger a collapse. Which takes us on to step 4. Looking around, Burry could tell that if the housing bubble bursts, it wouldn't just be bad news for housing, it would be bad news for the whole economy. It was like seeing the storm clouds building up, hinting at a storm coming. So step 4 is to monitor for bear market conditions. Moving on to step 5, even though it's more about stocks, Burry used financial clues to predict trouble. He saw that the loans didn't match up with what people could really pay. So step 5 is to search for warning signs in the numbers, which takes us on to step 6. Burry needed a way to place his bet against the housing market. He used something called credit default swaps, a kind of financial bet, because you can't directly short houses like you can stocks. So step 6 is to find a way to place your bet. Finally, for step 7, Burry figured out that the potential win from the housing market crash was worth the risk. He had a plan for when to back out, which was as soon as the market saw the bubble for what it was. So step 7 is to measure the risk against the win. And by carefully following these steps, Michael Burry pulled off one of the biggest successful shorts in history. He spotted the housing market was way overpriced, predicting the crash, and made his move to profit from it. Don't get me wrong, investing is an awesome way to make money, but if you don't have the money to invest with in the first place, then the skill is pretty much useless. So check out this video to learn 7 proven ways to make $500 a day even if you're broke.